Welcome to Thursday, July 17th, 2025. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at wyomingadvocates.com or give them a call at 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, as we go into the next segment of weather, the rest of this week, this weekend, and the next week, we'll have less in the way to talk about in cold fronts and more in the way of heat, especially in the longer term. We'll talk about that here in a moment. As we take a look today, though, still, temperatures for many of you will be below average, especially east of the divide, and we're still looking at thunderstorms around. However, the main push of the front is all the way down into the southern plains and southern Rockies now. That's where the more active thunderstorm activity will be, but daytime heating will cause a few thunderstorms to pop up. We have day 2 and day 3 scenarios behind the cold front for Friday and into Saturday. So Friday and Saturday, thunderstorms kind of surge northward again, and some are going to be severe. We'll need to keep an eye on that. Temperatures noticeably warming up as we get into Friday and the weekend. That little plume of monsoonal moisture we've been talking about is going to be active across portions of the southwest and west central parts of the United States today through Saturday and even into Sunday in some areas. So hopefully some of you folks west of the divide will be able to get lucky and get some rain in your area. It'll be hit and miss though. Large-scale weather pattern shift is going to happen across North America next week. And it's going to bring some changes to the weather across the United States, and we'll show you that here in a moment. But first, lots of great cloud photos and thunderstorm cloud photos to come in to show you here over the last 24 hours. It was a very interesting day indeed. That cap did break in some areas. The cap stayed in others, and the results were as you'd expect. Where the cap broke, thunderstorms developed very, very rapidly. And with the high humidity air, boy, they really produced a lot of showers and thunderstorms, and they were very low to the ground, and a lot of folks commenting how dark the skies were, and they were. One reason for that was there was just a lot of water in the air. We had dew points in the western high plains and along the front range areas of Wyoming and Colorado yesterday that were above 60 degrees. Now, that doesn't happen a lot. Dew points in the 60s and 70s happen all the time down in the deep south and into the plains, but there was a lot of water in the air, so the clouds were able to form closer to the ground. As you can see right there, it looked like Armageddon. It really did, as the clouds were very chaotic, and you'll see here in a couple of videos how it all came together. As we had the upslope, here's a good shot of the backside of the thunderstorm and the anvil, the backside of the anvil. That's why it looks like the clouds fractured right there. What you're actually seeing is the backside of the anvil as the thunderstorm left the Laramie Valley yesterday. Couple of videos to show you. Here's one north of Cheyenne, and it really did. It looked like kind of something you would see in the fall or the winter with a strong cold front advancing coming through with those low-hanging clouds, the darkness to them. But look at all that stuff that's going on in the clouds. And we'll see that here in a moment when we look at another classic Jan Curtis time lapse. This is one of the better time lapses that will show you in terms of what's going on. I want you to pay very close attention to where the clouds are moving at different levels, different heights above the ground. We had talked yesterday about the upslope on the ground coming in from an easterly direction, while we had this upper level trough in front coming in from the northwest. So we had opposing wind directions at different levels, a lot of moisture, the cap broke, and the end result are the chaotic skies that you can see here. So look at those low clouds, look at the direction they're moving, and the direction of the clouds just above there. Now watch here on the left side as we start to see the towering cumulonimbus clouds, cumulus congestus clouds building into the first thunderstorm of the afternoon that really came together quickly. Now this thunderstorm produced 1 to 2 inches of rain in some areas. Thankfully, the hail was small, but boy, lots going on there. And we saw that repeat itself a couple more times during the late afternoon and evening hours. Getting lots of reports of rainfall amounts, inch and a half, up to 2 inches in some areas. Now, results may vary. I know some of you may have only gotten a quarter of an inch. That's what I got. But there were other locations underneath these thunderstorms in parts of Colorado and Wyoming that really got a lot of rain out of these systems. Black Hills up here in the Deadwood area, they reported another inch of rain yesterday. So very wet in some areas with this pattern. So we'll end on a beautiful note here, Fremont Lake, Wyoming. How often do you see water that calm in Wyoming? Beautiful shot there. Thanks, Dave, for sending that in. The satellite photo this morning is still showing residual low clouds here in the blue, with the upslope still lingering behind the front. But you can see the axis of where the thunderstorms are this morning and overnight, and that's where the deeper subtropical moisture is. Here's the drier air getting punched in behind the cold front. However, we still have subtropical moisture right here in this area here, and it will stay throughout the day. So you're still going to get showers and thunderstorms here, but the drier air will suppress things further south. There's the temperature anomaly by the middle part of the day today. A lot of the nation, along and north of Interstate 80, quite cool relative to the 30-year average. Now, thunderstorms today aren't going to be nearly as widespread, more concentrated down here where the moisture is getting kind of compressed from the drier air punching in from the northwest. But we have a little bit of moisture up there and instability, and we're going to have that moisture and instability further south. So the Storm Prediction Center is highlighting a small area of strong thunderstorms up into Montana and North Dakota, southern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, that along the frontal boundary, as it gets draped across the United States as it heads east, will be active. As we look at what will be the pattern evolving over the next 5 to 7 days, we continue to see an area of high pressure here in the Gulf of Alaska. Another little low is going to sit up here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's more of a westerly flow going across the nation. By Saturday, that low is still in the southwestern parts of Canada, and we start to see the formation of this high. What I want you to pay attention to in the following slides is the southeastern United States and the eastern Pacific. So this is the configuration we've been here over the last couple of weeks, which has helped foster the formation of Canadian cold fronts by the placement of this high here. And that's going to continue here through the weekend and into the start of next week before we see some changes. But if you watch the wind barbs, we'll start to see the subtropical moisture still continuing into the beginnings of the weekend, but this will push a front across the northern interior of the United States. That temporarily early next week will suppress the monsoonal moisture a little bit more south. But next week, we get a bit of a change up here, and that makes all the difference when we take a look at overall trends in terms of temperature and the trends in terms of the monsoonal moisture flow. Short term, starting today and through the weekend, the precipitable water is showing, here's that plume coming up out of the southwest, comes across, you can see the darker colors. Now the darker colors begin to fade by Sunday, and you can see by Sunday there's a push of drier air coming up into Arizona. But we still see the subtropical moisture in kind of a ring around that. So tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, showers and thunderstorms in that subtropical moisture will be around. As we mentioned, Friday and Saturday likely to be a couple of active days of heavier thunderstorms along and east of the divide. And here you can see Friday's thunderstorm activity. It surges back north again. So fingers crossed for you folks here that really need some rain. These should be good rain producers. It doesn't mean it's going to rain on everybody, but western Colorado and Utah, back here into parts of the Great Basin, are going to see some thunderstorms. And there's going to be kind of a concentration here in southwestern, western New Mexico as well. And then there's going to be some strong to severe thunderstorms out here on the plains. So that's Friday, the second day after the cold front. And we'll probably see this marginal risk expand further to the south and west, as is usually the case for the day tomorrow. On Saturday, there's more of a concentration north-south of the axis of moisture. There's still going to be some showers and thunderstorms back here, but this area along and east of I-25, back into western and central areas of New Mexico, out into the plains, Saturday will be some strong thunderstorms, and there you can see that. And again, expect this to get pushed back to the west and southwest. So it's going to be busy. Now by Sunday, the drier air pushes a little more east. The axis gets more pushed out into the plains of the Dakotas, Nebraska, far eastern Colorado, and western Kansas, but still holding back down here. The higher terrain from the heat of the day, southern Wyoming, northern Colorado's mountains, you're going to have thunderstorms continuing through the weekend. Then as we shift into next week, this is what I wanted to talk about in terms of a large-scale change. Notice the high pressure ridge is now backing a little bit more towards the Aleutians. We have a trough forming here in the Pacific Northwest, while this high becomes more established in the south central parts of the U.S. This is going to do a couple of things. This is the high pressure ridge that frankly is about 3 weeks late from starting. This is the ridge a lot of folks saw earlier in the long-range summer forecast that we're calling for so much hot weather in the United States. So some hot weather's coming. It's just about 3.5 weeks late. This is early next week. This is Tuesday. So the clockwise flow will bring subtropical moisture in. So there's going to be showers and thunderstorms across the west, along with some warmer temperature readings. Then look what happens a week later. So this is next Tuesday. This is the Tuesday after the 29th. Look in the Gulf of Alaska. We've replaced the high with a low. This high here retrogrades a little bit more to the west. And this is where you get heat domes in the center part of the country. We don't have the fronts attacking the high anymore. So this will allow some summer heat for the last 10 days of July into early August to really boil up in the central United States. However, this is also a configuration that will allow subtropical moisture access to the western United States at times in surges. So that means, especially the last 7 days of July into the first week of August, there should be monsoonal plumes in this pattern coming through and a lot of heat in the central United States. So if you look what happens, this is for the next 7 days, the temperature anomaly for the next week. So you can see the coolness lingering across the northern part of the United States, Mexico and California. You haven't heard about any heat waves in California this summer, have you? And you won't, because of this particular pattern that we're in, at least here for a little bit longer. You can see the heat right here in the central areas of the United States where the high is going to want to set up. But if you transition to the second week, the second half of the 2-week forecast, you see this. Now, the European model is still way too warm, especially north and west of that line I just drew. This is not going to verify as much, but this is. You see this clustering of the heat right here? So you're going to get hot and dry out really quickly across areas of Texas hit by the flooding and across the central United States. So the heat dome right here is really going to get established. But you can see the blue here in Mexico creeping up into New Mexico and Colorado. That's because it sees the moisture. But again, the European model up here is too hot. But this is certainly going to come to fruition. So when you put it together, this is the upcoming Tuesday. This is the following Tuesday, allowing that subtropical moisture to come in. Now, this really highlights the precipitable water. This is for next week. Okay, so this is Tuesday. That configuration starts to draw in that dry air into central Texas and the Oklahoma, Kansas area. But here's your classic ring, your ring of fire that's going to set up towards the middle of next week. That's going to go around through the Rockies, curve back around into the plains and the Great Lakes. So you've got the hot dome of high pressure here. See the Pacific Northwest? You're going to be cool up here with that trough just off the coast. This is why this area right here won't be as hot as the European model is showing, because of the activity with showers or storms. So this is classic. You get the heat dome here, you get the ring of fire around it, and that will persist for a good part of next week and probably into the following week. And so if we were to just look at next Thursday's thunderstorm forecast to match up with the precipitable water, you can see this ring right here setting up. Thunderstorms getting up into Canada right here. And these thunderstorms, this is through 6 p.m. Mountain Time, These thunderstorms here carry on into the overnight hours and into the morning hours here, completing the ring. So we are going to see some bona fide heat come into the central and western United States starting mid to late next week and into the following week. But we also have this ring of moisture that'll come up around it. If you look at climatology, you look historically at some of the bigger dumps of rain you can get in the monsoonal pattern, especially in the central and northern Rockies. Those last days of July into those early days of August is kind of a peak, and this is one reason why the establishment of that southern plains high pressure system. And if you look at the precipitation forecast through next Friday, you can see that ring showing up very well there. You can also see the rain hole starting to develop in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Have yourself a good Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow.